Hey guys, how's it going? We are back and welcome to a special free-to-play guide of mine. This is going to be my free-to-play guide for woodcutting. Previously, I've done a free-to-play guide for runecrafting that actually has got a lot of attention, specifically within the free-to-play community since mobile came out, so I figure I may as well make a guide for every free-to-play skill. So I'm going to be starting that today with woodcutting, as it is one of my favorite free-to-play skills and one of the most profitable as well. Before we get started with the guide though, if you are looking for free-to-play content, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I'm one of probably only about 5 at this point free-to-play content creators, so you will expect to see a lot of free-to-play stuff coming from me in the very near future, so feel free to subscribe. Also, if you do enjoy or get something out of this guide, feel free to like. But that's all the shilling that I'm gonna do. Let's get into the guide, and I hope you guys find it very useful. So when you're first getting into woodcutting, there's a few key things that you're going to need to know. Probably the most important is the tools that are available to you. As of now, November of 2018, there are currently 7 woodcutting axes available to free-to-play players. I'm going to put them up on the screen with visual representations for you now. As you can see, the 7 axes available to you are in ascending order in terms of level: bronze, iron, steel, black, mithril, adamant, and rune. And as you can also see, not every axe is available at every woodcutting level. The earlier axes that you're going to be using, the bronzes, iron, steels, and so on, are available at significantly lower levels than their counterparts with the rune and adamant axes. Bronze and iron can both be used from level 1, so right off the bat. Steel you'll get at level 6, then black at level 11, mithril at level 21, adamant at level 31, and then finally rune, which I'm currently wielding, at level 41. This may seem like a weird numbering system, but basically how you want to think of it is just add 5 for every tier of axe from level 1, at which you start with bronze and iron. An efficient way to think about your woodcutting axes is to start with iron, as it is the better of the 2 axes available at level 1, then switch to steel once you hit level 6, which won't take very long at all. You can optionally upgrade to a black axe at level 11, however they are notably more expensive even than the axes following it, and you're only going to be using it for 10 levels before moving over to a mithril axe, which, believe it or not, is less expensive. Honestly, a steel axe will do you just fine and be fairly efficient all the way to level 21, at which point you're going to want to use a mithril axe, and then an adamant and a rune. So basically what you're going to do, looking at this chart, is skip bronze, go straight to iron, upgrade once you get to steel at level 6, and then skip black, go straight to mithril, and then upgrade at every tier after that, leading up to rune, which is the best and subsequently most expensive axe to buy. Now, there are a couple of places that you can buy axes. If you're just starting out the game and you're in Lumbridge, you can quickly travel down to Bob's Brilliant Axes in Lumbridge, which is just a couple steps south of Varrock Castle. For the most part though, and for most players, you're going to buy your axes directly from the Grand Exchange. There are lots of monsters in the members world, and in some cases even in the free-to-play world, that drop higher tier axes that you can just buy directly from the Grand Exchange for discount prices, as especially in members, they're fairly common. I won't bother putting up price charts or anything right now because those prices change daily, and it's just not worth it, because if I did that, this video would be outdated in a matter of weeks. But that's that for the tools of woodcutting. Believe it or not, you literally are just going to need an axe and nothing else. So with that said, let's move on to the trees themselves that you're going to be cutting down. So just as there are axes available to you at certain levels, the same also applies for the trees themselves. You can't cut a yew tree at level 1, unfortunately. You're going to have to start out with regular trees, which are what I'm currently standing around in game. I'll go ahead and throw up a chart real quick of what level corresponds to each tree, but I won't bother going over those right now because we're actually going to go through all of those trees as we progress. When you first start out woodcutting, you, like I said, are only going to be able to cut regular trees. An easy place to find them is, well, just about anywhere. They do litter the entire surface of the free-to-play world. There is quite a large forest of them though behind Varrock Castle leading up to Xrenor, and I'll do my best to show you specific places on the maps where you can find these trees in abundance. For regular trees though, as you can see if I zoom out, every one of these little dots you're looking at here represents a tree, and again, as you can see, they are pretty much everywhere. You could theoretically go up to Barbarian Village and do just fine cutting them down, and it honestly doesn't matter where you cut them down. The XP rates are pretty much the same everywhere, and since you're only going to be here for 15 levels, which takes honestly about 10 minutes, it really doesn't matter very much where you cut them down. Cutting them down in a densely forested area is nice though, because as I'm about to show you here, once you cut down a tree, you can immediately just jump to another tree, cut that one down, and continue going around deforesting the entire area. And that's really all there is to it for the first 15 levels of woodcutting. You're just going to go around rampantly cutting down these basic trees until you hit level 15, at which point you will immediately switch to oak trees. Oak trees are available to you at level 15 woodcutting, and at this point you should have upgraded your axe at least once, perhaps twice if you decided to move to a black axe. Again, oak trees, similarly to regular trees, are found all over Xrenor, but there is a pretty strong concentration of them really close again to Lumbridge, so you can jump immediately over from the regular trees to the oak trees in Xrenor. The ones I'm standing at are right next to Xrenor Bank, which is why they are my personal favorite. You can cut the logs and run to the bank in a matter of seconds, and there's also one right across the road, so if you do cut this one down, you can just run over there if you'd like. That said, oak trees do respawn really quite quickly. Let's see if I can demonstrate that here. I'll speed this clip up and then I'll show you how fast they regrow. And there it is, I've just cut down the tree and it should respawn in a matter of seconds, meaning we don't really have to run anywhere else. There it goes. Only took about 5 to 7 seconds. I didn't bother counting because it's really quite short. It's not even worth it to run over to the other tree. It is also worth noting with oak trees, you do get significantly more logs from each oak tree. It could be just one, or it could fill up your inventory twice. It really doesn't have any rhyme or reason. So with this method, you're going to have to bank your logs quite a bit more often, but again, you are right next to a bank, so it's not much of a problem. And speaking of being right next to a bank, the next set of trees is actually just right on the other side of this bank, and they are called Willow Trees. Willow trees can be cut down at level 30 woodcutting, and you should have upgraded your axe to be a mithril axe at this point, which you can do at level 21 woodcutting. With that said though, you can access adamant axes at level 31, so there's really only one level you have to go through before you unlock a new axe that will be very helpful for you. Willow trees, like oak trees, can give you more than one log for each tree, and I'll demonstrate that now. As you can see, just based on the fact that these bounce up, it's maybe not quite as fast as oak trees, but especially considering how close they are together, it's really not much of an issue as you can just bounce between each one. These trees, like I said earlier, are right next to the Xrenor Village Bank, but again, they are a pretty significant tree on the face of Xrenor. There's also a set of a couple over here that we're actually going to travel to have a look at, and the reason I will explain in just one moment. And now as we stand next to these 4 willows in close concentration, you might be wondering why there's nobody else here. There is one main reason for that, and that is that we are not very close to a bank. If we can see here, we would have to run all the way north along this fence and then back down to get to the bank, and it's really not very efficient at all. There is one perk to this though, especially at lower levels, and that is 1, those dark wizards you saw around the first willow trees, they will attack you up to level 15, I believe it is. So be wary of those guys. They can hit pretty hard, and it can be quite easy for them to take you down, kill you, and then you lose all your items. With that said, once you're beyond there, if you're not fearful of them, it's nothing to worry about. But something that might concern you is the concentration of people at the trees, especially on worlds that aren't set for a total level, which I'm currently on, requiring 750 total skill, which I have 936 of. They can be really quite crowded, especially due to bots. Basically, people create accounts that aren't actually manned by real people, they're just robots that will gather resources for them that they can sell on their main accounts for profit. But if you're standing over at these trees, you should have significantly less problem with competing for trees, especially against bots. And if you're not terribly concerned about keeping the logs to sell, as they aren't worth very much at all. If we actually have a look right now, one set of willow logs is only worth 10 GP, so they're not hardly worth keeping. What you can do is actually just drop them and then fill up your inventory all over again to get the most efficient XP. A handy little tip is that if you click the shift button, you can actually just left click to drop the logs rather than having to right click them and then tell it to drop. As you can see, it's quite a lot faster to do it that way. Now, believe it or not, despite only requiring 30 woodcutting to cut them down, willow trees are actually the most efficient tree to cut down in free-to-play RuneScape, beating out maples and yews, which have a higher woodcutting requirement, but are significantly slower to chop down, thus reducing your XP rate. It's general knowledge at this point that if you're going for XP, you're going to want to cut down willow trees. So theoretically, if you were going for 99 woodcutting in free-to-play, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend, that would take a very long time, you would cut down willow trees from level 30 all the way to level 99. As of recording this video in November of 2018, there is no better woodcutting XP than cutting down willow trees. As you can see, maple trees look different than any other free-to-play tree in that they are bright red, just like in real life. At this time at least, maple trees can only be found in one area of free-to-play RuneScape, and that is in an area called Corsair Cove. Unfortunately, if you're trying to do these trees at an early level, they're a little bit difficult to get to. You actually have to do 2 different quests to get to them, those quests being Corsair Curse, which is actually quite easy, and then unfortunately the most difficult quest in free-to-play RuneScape, Dragon Slayer. So you have to do 2 quests, one of which is the most difficult in the free-to-play game to get to this area, but once you get here and you have level 45 woodcutting, you can cut down maple trees. Similarly to willows and oaks, they yield more than 1 log per tree, but they do take a little bit longer to respawn. That said, especially with there being 4 of them here, you really don't have to worry about it because you can just run between trees. A nice thing about being in this area though is that you don't have to worry about it being overcrowded, as it is quite difficult for free-to-play players to get here. Especially for accounts that are bots, they're not really going to invest any time in questing, so they aren't going to do Dragon Slayer and therefore aren't going to have access to this island, so you're pretty much free to do whatever you want. As you can see, there's absolutely nobody here right now that I'm contesting these trees with. As for the profitability, and again this does change over time, so unfortunately these prices will be outdated pretty much immediately, but should give you a general idea of how profitable they are. We have a look. Maple logs are currently going for 8 GP each, so really not very good. Even worse than willows, believe it or not, so it's not worth cutting these guys either, and especially considering they are less efficient to cut down than willow trees, there's really no reason that you're going to cut them down. Unfortunately, maple trees at this point have no viability in the free-to-play game. With that said though, there is one tree very nearby that does have perhaps the most viability to the free-to-play meta, and that is the Yew Tree, which you unlock at level 60 woodcutting, ideally the level I have right now. As you can see, Yew Trees are by far the largest tree in the free-to-play game. They also require the highest woodcutting level, like I said, being level 60. They are in turn the most profitable, without a doubt, tree in the free-to-play game. I'm going to cut some down real quick just so you can see how profitable they are. What you'll notice though while I'm cutting down this Yew Tree, if it ever happens even, is that it takes a very long time, especially at a low woodcutting level, which I currently have. Again, similarly to every other tree except the regular trees, you will yield more than 1 log from each yew tree, and they actually tend to give quite a few, even more so than willows, maples, and oaks. But as we've cut down 3, let's have a look at the price, and you might be a little surprised by this. Again, remember that these prices do change over time, so this won't be entirely accurate, but give a general idea. There it is, 241. It's actually more than I even expected at the moment. A price per log of 241 makes yew logs very profitable, as with each inventory you'll be making 6,700 GP, which especially for low levels accounts is going to seem like quite a lot. It's understandable though why it is so expensive. Firstly, they are the highest requirement free-to-play tree to cut down, so of course not very many people in the free-to-play game have access to them. Secondly, their logs are most in demand for players who are using a skill called fletching, which we unfortunately don't have access to as free-to-play players, but basically what the members do with the logs is cut them into bows and stuff of that effect. Basically, the free-to-play players are cutting down the trees to feed the members' economy. And I'm now in a different area of Xrenor. I'm currently at the back courtyard of Varrock Castle, where you can find 3 yew trees, and it doesn't require completion of the Corsair Cove quest, which will be nice for a lot of you who are not trying to do Dragon Slayer. Very understandable for a free-to-play player not to want to do that. This area behind the castle, along with the area to the south of Falador where you see these 3 tree icons, are 2 of the most popular, if not most popular, areas outside of Corsair Cove for cutting out yew trees. Probably the Varrock Castle more so, as it is right next to the Grand Exchange and therefore a bank, so it is very easy to get your logs run over and run back in a matter of seconds. With the Falador trees, you will generally find it to be a little less crowded, but of course you have to run a little ways up the trail to the Falador East Bank to bank those profitable logs. And you might be wondering to yourself, hey Xren, why would I do anything other than Yew Trees if they're so profitable? Well, as you can see again, I'm trying to cut it. It's not really working out for me. They are very, very slow to cut. They do give a lot of XP when you do cut a log, but it is so infrequent that it really isn't efficient to cut these at any level as a free-to-play player with a rune axe. So in general and in summation, once you reach level 60, you can cut yew logs, and you're going to want to do that if you're looking for profit, especially once you get up at higher levels like 70 and 75, when it'll become more efficient to cut yew logs. But at any level beyond 30, if you're looking for XP, you're going to want to cut willow trees. And with that said, guys, that's really all there is to free-to-play woodcutting. We've now gone over all of the free-to-play axes that you can use and all the free-to-play trees you can access. And with that said, guys, that's really all there is to free-to-play woodcutting. We've gone over all the tools available to you and all the trees available to you. So I hope you guys have found this guide useful. If you have made it to the end, make sure to leave a like on it. I do greatly appreciate that. And with that said, good luck woodcutting.